I wake up to the sound of nothing. That's the first thing you notice when you get to my age. The silence. It sits in the corners of the house like a living thing. My wife used to fill it with her humming. She hummed while she made breakfast. She hummed while she watered the plants on the back porch. She hummed while she folded laundry on the couch. I never told her how much I loved that sound. Now the silence is all I have. I'm 71 years old. My name is Bill. I live in a 3-bedroom house in Lancaster, Pennsylvania that feels like a museum of someone else's life. The walls are still the same pale yellow she picked out in 1987. The kitchen still has the same harvest gold appliances we argued about for a month. The garage still holds my tools on the same pegboard I built when I was 43. Everything is exactly where it was when she was alive. Nothing moves. Nothing breathes. Nothing hums. My wife died 14 months ago. Cancer. Pancreatic. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. That was the first time my family showed me who they really were. I just didn't see it yet. I have 2 children. A son named Mark. A daughter named Jennifer. Mark is 42. Jennifer is 39. Mark is a real estate developer in Harrisburg. Jennifer is a stay-at-home mother in York. They both have families of their own. Mark has 2 boys. Jennifer has a girl and a boy. I have 4 grandchildren. I used to tell everyone that was my real wealth. 4 kids who called me Pop-Pop.
4 kids who ran to the door when I visited. 4 kids who made me forget that my own children had stopped calling. I was a carpenter for 37 years, built custom cabinets, did high-end kitchens for people with too much money and not enough taste. I retired at 65 because my knees gave out. My wife Carol was still working as a receptionist at a dental office. She was supposed to retire at 67. We had plans. We were going to buy an RV and drive to the Grand Canyon. She had never seen the Grand Canyon. I had never seen her more excited about anything. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. She had been complaining about stomach pain for a few weeks. We thought it was indigestion. She had always had a sensitive stomach. But then the pain got worse, and she started losing weight, and her skin turned this awful yellow color. I drove her to the hospital myself. I remember holding her hand in the waiting room. She was so cold. Her fingers felt like ice. The doctor pulled me into a hallway and told me. He used words like metastatic and aggressive and palliative. I stopped listening after 6 weeks. The treatments didn't work. Nothing worked. She faded so fast I could barely keep up. By the 3rd week, she was in a hospital bed in our living room. By the 4th week, she stopped eating. By the 5th week, she stopped talking. She died on a Sunday morning. I was holding her hand. Her eyes were open. She was looking at me. Then she wasn't looking at anything anymore.
Mark and Jennifer came to the funeral. They brought the kids. They hugged me. They cried. They told me they loved me. They told me they would always be there for me. They promised to call more. They promised to visit. They promised that I wouldn't be alone. I believed every word, because I needed to believe them. I had just buried my wife of 43 years. I was standing in a cemetery in a cheap black suit, watching them lower her into the ground. I needed to believe that someone still loved me. The first month after she died was a blur of paperwork and frozen dinners and phone calls I didn't want to answer. Mark called every few days. Jennifer came over once a week to check on me. The grandchildren drew me pictures. I taped them to the refrigerator, just like Carol used to do. I kept waiting for the fog to lift. I kept waiting to feel like myself again. But myself was gone. He died in that hospital bed, right next to her. I started noticing small things around the 3-month mark. Mark was coming over more often. He said he was worried about me. He said I shouldn't be alone so much. He brought dinner. He brought his laptop. He sat at my kitchen table for hours, typing and making phone calls. I thought he was working remotely to spend time with me. I was grateful. I told my friends how lucky I was to have a son who cared so much. He started asking questions about the house. Innocent questions at first. How much did you pay for it back in '85?
Do you still owe anything on the mortgage? Have you thought about what you want to do with it long term? I didn't think anything of it. We were just talking. Fathers and sons talk about things like that. I told him the house was paid off. I told him Carol and I bought it for $62,000. I told him it was probably worth 5 times that now. He nodded. He wrote something on his phone. I thought he was just taking notes for himself. Jennifer started acting strange around the same time. She would call me crying about her marriage. Her husband, Tom, was distant. He worked too much. He didn't help with the kids. She was so lonely in that big house in York. I listened to every word. I gave her advice. I told her marriage was hard and she had to fight for it. I told her Tom was a good man underneath it all. I believed that because I needed to believe my daughter had married a good man. I didn't know then that Tom was just following orders. The first crack appeared 6 months after Carol died. I was looking for my birth certificate. I needed it for some insurance thing. I keep all my important papers in a metal lockbox in my bedroom closet. The lockbox was in its usual spot on the top shelf, but the lock was different. Someone had replaced the combination lock with a cheap padlock, a padlock I didn't have the key for. I stood there in the closet staring at it. My first thought was that Carol had changed it before she got sick and forgot to tell me. But Carol never touched the lockbox. That was my domain, my papers, my responsibility. Then I thought maybe I had changed it myself and forgotten. But I don't forget things like that. I remember every combination I have ever used. It was a habit from years of working on job sites where you had to lock up your tools every night. I called Mark. I asked him if he knew anything about the lockbox. There was a pause, a long pause. Then he said no. He said maybe I should call a locksmith. He said maybe I was just getting older and forgetting things. He laughed when he said it. A small laugh, a laugh that didn't reach his voice. I hung up and felt something cold move through my chest. I called a locksmith the next day. The guy came out with a grinder. He cut the padlock in about 4 seconds. He looked at me like I was an idiot for calling him for such a simple job. I opened the lockbox and found everything exactly where it should be. My birth certificate, Carol's birth certificate, our marriage license, the deed to the house, the titles to both cars, my will, Carol's will. Everything was there. Nothing was missing. But the lockbox had a second compartment, a hidden one. Carol didn't even know about it. I built it myself years ago when I was paranoid about burglars. The hidden compartment was empty. It was supposed to hold $10,000 in cash, money I had saved over the years from side jobs, money Carol didn't know about, money I was going to use for the RV. The cash was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed holding the empty compartment. My hands were shaking, not from age, from something else. Someone had been in this lockbox. Someone had changed the lock. Someone had taken my money. And whoever that someone was had to know where the hidden compartment was. They had to know I even had a hidden compartment. I had never told anyone about it. Not Mark, not Jennifer, not Carol. No one. I started paying attention after that. Really paying attention. I noticed that Mark was coming over less now. He used to come twice a week. Now it was once, then every other week, then not at all. But his name kept showing up on my bank statements. He was listed as a co-signer on my checking account. I didn't remember adding him. I didn't remember signing anything. But there it was, in black and white. Mark T. Harrison, joint account holder. I went to the bank. A young woman with kind eyes pulled up my file. She asked me if I remembered coming in 6 months ago to add my son to the account. I said no. She showed me the signature card. The signature was mine. It looked exactly like my signature. Same loops, same pressure, same slant. But it wasn't mine. I could feel it in my bones. Someone had forged my signature. I asked the woman to freeze the account. She said she couldn't do that without Mark's permission since he was a joint owner. I asked her how much money was left. She printed a statement and handed it to me. The account had started with $143,000. That was my entire savings, my retirement, my emergency fund, the money I had worked 47 years to earn. There was $11,000 left. I didn't cry in the bank. I didn't scream. I didn't even raise my voice. I just folded the statement and put it in my pocket and walked out to my truck. I sat in the parking lot for an hour. I watched people come and go. I watched a mother buckle her child into a car seat. I watched an old man hold the door for a young couple. I watched the world keep spinning while mine stopped. I drove to Mark's office in Harrisburg. He has a nice building on the edge of downtown, glass and steel, and a sign with his name in gold letters. I walked past his assistant without saying a word. I opened his door and found him on the phone. He looked up at me and his face went white. Not pale, white, like someone had drained all the blood out of him at once. I threw the bank statement on his desk. I told him to get off the phone. He told the person he would call them back. Then he sat there looking at me with these eyes I didn't recognize, these cold, empty eyes. He didn't look like my son. He looked like a stranger wearing my son's face. He admitted everything, not because he felt guilty, because he knew he was caught. He told me he had been forging my signature for months. He told me he had taken the money to cover losses in his real estate business. He told me he had changed the lock on my lockbox and taken the cash because he knew I would notice the bank withdrawals eventually. He told me he had planned to pay it all back. He told me he was sorry. I asked him about Jennifer. I asked him if she knew. He looked down at his desk. He didn't say anything. That was all the answer I needed. I drove to York that same afternoon. I didn't call first. I didn't text. I just showed up at Jennifer's door. She opened it with a smile that faded when she saw my face. She asked me what was wrong. I told her I knew. I told her I knew about the money and the lockbox and the forgery. I told her I knew she was involved. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She just leaned against the doorframe and crossed her arms. She told me that Mark said I was going to lose the house anyway. She told me that Mark said I had dementia and couldn't manage my own finances. She told me that Mark was just trying to protect the family's inheritance. She told me that I was old and I didn't need all that money anyway. I asked her who put the lockbox idea in Mark's head. She said Tom. Tom was the one who remembered me talking about the hidden compartment years ago at a family dinner. Tom was the one who suggested changing the lock so I would think I had just forgotten the combination. Tom was the one who kept Jennifer close to me so she could report back on what I was saying and doing. My son-in-law, the man I helped move into that house. The man I loaned $5,000 to when his truck broke down. The man I spent every Christmas with for 15 years. He was the architect of all of it. I stood in Jennifer's doorway and felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had already been broken by Carol's death. Something deeper. Something I didn't even have a name for. The part of a man that believes his children love him. That part died right there on her welcome mat. I didn't say goodbye. I just turned around and walked back to my truck. I drove home in silence. I didn't listen to the radio. I didn't call anyone. I just drove. When I got home, I went into the garage and sat in my old folding chair, the one I used to sit in while I watched Mark work on his bicycle, the one I used to sit in while I taught Jennifer how to sand a piece of wood, the one Carol used to sit in while she read her romance novels on summer evenings. I sat there until the sun went down. Then I sat there until the stars came out. Then I sat there until the neighbors called the police because they saw an old man sitting in the dark, alone. The police were kind. 2 young officers who looked like they were still in high school. They asked me if I was okay. I said no. They asked me if I wanted to hurt myself. I said no. They asked me if there was someone they could call. I gave them my brother's number. My brother Donald lives in Scranton. He is 68 years old. He has his own problems. His wife left him 10 years ago.
His youngest son won't speak to him, but he came down the next morning anyway. He drove 2 hours in the rain to sit at my kitchen table and listen to everything. Donald was the one who told me to get a lawyer. Donald was the one who helped me freeze the bank account properly. Donald was the one who stayed with me for 2 weeks while I sorted through the wreckage of my life. I never thanked him properly. I don't know if I ever will. The lawyer was a woman named Patricia Klein. She was 63 years old with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses and a voice that could cut through concrete. She listened to my story without interrupting. Then she told me the truth. The money was probably gone. Mark had already transferred most of it to offshore accounts. His business was bankrupt. His house was in foreclosure. He was drowning, and he had tried to take me down with him. Patricia asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. She asked me if I was sure. I said I had never been more sure of anything in my life. The next 6 months were a war. Mark and Jennifer hired their own lawyer, a slick man named Bradley, who wore suits that cost more than my first car. They claimed I had given Mark power of attorney voluntarily. They claimed I had signed over the bank account willingly. They claimed I was suffering from dementia and had simply forgotten my own actions. They produced documents. They produced witnesses. They produced a fake video of me signing something that was clearly edited. The court dates blurred together. I sat in the same cold courtroom week after week. I watched my children sit on the other side of the room with their expensive lawyer and their expensive clothes and their expensive lies. I watched them whisper to each other and glance at me with these looks I couldn't read. Anger, maybe? Or guilt? Or something worse? Indifference. Patricia was good, better than good. She found the locksmith who had cut the padlock. He testified about the lock being new and the combination being changed. She found the bank teller who had watched Mark forge my signature. The teller had been fired for something unrelated and had nothing to lose. She found emails between Mark and Tom discussing the hidden compartment, emails they thought they had deleted, emails that Patricia's tech guy pulled from a server backup. The judge was a woman in her 50s with a face like granite. She listened to everything for 7 days. Then she ruled. Mark was guilty of fraud and forgery. Jennifer was guilty of conspiracy. Tom was guilty of conspiracy. The court froze all of their assets. I was awarded $112,000 in damages. The rest of my money was gone forever. Mark was looking at prison time. The DA decided to pursue criminal charges. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty. I had just put my own son in prison.
I had just destroyed my daughter's marriage, and her reputation, and her future. I had just torn my family apart in the most public way possible. And the worst part was that I was right. I was completely and totally right. And being right felt like being dead. The grandchildren stopped calling. I don't blame them. Their parents told them terrible things about me, that I was crazy, that I was mean, that I was trying to steal her house. I sent birthday cards and Christmas presents. They came back unopened. I drove past Jennifer's house once. The kids were playing in the front yard. My granddaughter Lily looked up and saw me. She was 9 years old. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Then she turned around and ran inside. That was 2 years ago. I live alone now, in the same house. The house Mark tried to steal. The house Tom helped him target. The house where Carol died, and where my children died, and where I am slowly dying myself. I still get up every morning. I still make coffee. I still read the paper. I still do the crossword puzzle, even though I don't enjoy it anymore. I do it because it fills the time. My brother calls every Sunday. We talk about nothing. The weather, the Eagles game, his bad back, my bad knees. We never talk about what happened. We don't need to. The silence between us says everything. I have a dog now, a yellow lab I named Duke. He was a rescue. He was 6 years old when I got him. His previous owners had abandoned him at a shelter because they were moving and didn't want to take him along. I know how that feels. Duke and I understand each other. He sleeps at the foot of my bed. He follows me from room to room. He puts his head in my lap when I sit in the garage and stare at nothing. Last week, I went to the hardware store to buy a new light bulb for the porch. I saw Tom there. He was buying paint. He looked older, thinner. His hair had gone gray at the temples. He saw me and froze. We stood there in the paint aisle for what felt like an hour. Neither of us spoke. Then he turned around and walked away. He didn't buy the paint. He just left his cart in the middle of the aisle and walked out the door. I finished my shopping.
I bought the light bulb. I bought a bag of dog food for Duke. I bought a pack of peppermints for myself, because Carol always kept peppermints in her purse. And sometimes I miss her so much I can't breathe. Then I drove home. I changed the light bulb. I fed Duke. I sat in my recliner and waited for the day to end. People ask me if I regret it. Pressing charges. Taking my children to court. Making sure my son went to prison. My friends ask me. My brother asked me. The cashier at the grocery store asked me once when she saw my name in the paper. They all want to know if I wish I had done something different. The answer is no. I don't regret a single thing. They stole from me. They lied to me. They looked at their dying mother and their grieving father and saw dollar signs. They tried to take the only thing I had left after Carol died, the house where I raised them, the walls where I marked their height every birthday, the backyard where I taught them because they thought I was too old and too weak and too stupid to stop them. They were wrong. I am old. I am weak some days. I am tired in ways I cannot explain. But I am not stupid, and I am not dead yet. The house is quiet now. Duke is snoring on the floor next to my chair. The porch light is on. The kitchen is dark. The bedroom upstairs still smells like Carol's perfume, even though I have washed the sheets 100 times. I don't know how much time I have left. Maybe 10 years? Maybe 10 days. That's the thing about getting old. You stop counting time. You just try to make it through each night so you can see the sun come up one more time. My son is in prison until he is 47. My daughter moved to Florida with Tom. They changed their names. I had a private investigator find them last year. Jennifer is calling herself Sarah now. She works at a real estate office. She cut her hair short and dyed it blonde. She looks nothing like the little girl I used to push on the swings at the park. She looks like a stranger wearing my daughter's face. The grandchildren don't know the truth.
They never will. Their parents will tell them whatever story makes them feel like the victims, and I will be the villain. The bitter old man who destroyed his own family over money. I will be the cautionary tale they tell at family dinners. The grandfather who forgot how to love. But I know the truth. I know what they did. I know what they tried to take from me. And I know that if I had let them get away with it, I would have died a long time ago. Not physically, but everything else. The part of me that still had a spine. The part of me that still believed in justice. The part of me that Carol fell in love with because I never backed down from a fight. I look at Duke sleeping on the floor. He sighs in his sleep. His legs twitch like he is chasing something. A rabbit, maybe? Or a squirrel? Or just a memory of a time when someone loved him enough to throw a stick. I close my eyes. The house settles around me. The furnace kicks on. The refrigerator hums. And somewhere in the darkness, I hear Carol humming too. The same tune she always hummed. The one I never learned the name of. The one I will carry with me until the day they put me in the ground next to her. I don't know if there is a heaven. I don't know if there is a hell. I don't know if I will see Carol again, or if my children will ever say they are sorry, or if my grandchildren will ever look at me like I am not a monster. I don't know any of those things, but I know this. I did the right thing. Even though it cost me everything. Even though I sit alone in this house every night, with nothing but a dog and a memory, and the sound of my own breathing. I did the right thing. And that is the only thing keeping me alive. The sun will come up tomorrow. I will make coffee. I will read the paper. I will take Duke for a walk. I will sit in my garage and stare at nothing. And I will wait. Not for forgiveness. Not for a phone call. Not for a knock on the door. Just for the next moment.
and the one after that, until there are no more moments left. That is what it means to be an old man who has lost everything. You don't live. You just persist. You keep breathing because that is what you do. Not because you want to, because stopping would mean they won, and I will not let them win.